Most women believe that what men want is beauty, youth, softness, submission. But what if the truth lived far beneath the surface, buried in the shadows of his unconscious, aching like an old wound that never closed? What would you think if I told you that what a man truly craves is not comfort, but confrontation? Not the woman who pleases, but the one who pierces? This is not the fantasy he shows the world. No, in the daylight, he reaches for the agreeable, the easy, the tame. He clings to control like armor, afraid that if it slips, his soul might be exposed. But deep within, behind the mask of masculine certainty, behind the bravado and practiced detachment, there is a secret, a hunger, a wound. What a man secretly craves is a woman who awakens the very parts of him he has spent a lifetime bearing. The woman who doesn't simply reflect his desires, but reveals them, not with words, but with silence. Not with approval, but with presence. Not by needing him, but by seeing through him. Carl Jung taught us that the psyche is not a linear structure of logic, but a labyrinth of symbols, myths, and archetypes. And no archetype haunts a man more than the one he cannot control. The anima, the feminine force inside him that he has disowned, denied, or projected onto the women he desires. It is she who wears many faces, the muse, the witch, the lover, the destroyer. And when a living woman embodies her, when she stands before him without apology, he is captivated and terrified. He will call her dangerous. He will say she is too much, too cold, too intense, too distant. But what he means is, she sees me. She sees past the polished exterior and speaks to the ancient part of him that still remembers the language of dreams, of longing, of truth. You see, men are not conditioned to crave depth. They are conditioned to fear it. Depth means surrender. And surrender to a man who has been taught that power equals worth feels like death. But in the presence of a woman who has done her own shadow work, who does not chase, does not beg, does not perform, he is invited to remember a forgotten part of himself. This is the paradox that confuses so many women. He seems repelled by your depth, your detachment, your silence. But then he circles back, again and again. Why? Because on a soul level, he craves the woman who doesn't need him to feel worthy. Because only then can he question his own illusions of power. He craves the woman who doesn't argue, but withdraws. Not to punish, but to preserve. He craves the woman who doesn't explain her worth, because her energy demands he meet her there. But he cannot admit this, not even to himself, because to do so would require the collapse of everything he was told masculinity meant. The man who secretly craves the depth of a feminine soul also fears that it will destroy him. And in a way, it will. It will unravel the ego. It will expose the false self. It will burn away the illusions of control. And in that fire, something real will rise. But not all men are ready for this death. Not all men are prepared to meet the feminine in her full spiritual power. So they ghost, they mock, they return to the superficial. Because it's safer to desire from afar than to stand naked before a woman who is no longer bound by validation. If this has ever happened to you, you are not too much. You are not unlovable. You are simply vibrating at the level of truth. And truth is terrifying to those who live in denial. You will be misunderstood. You will be misnamed. But the man who feels you, truly feels you, will never forget you. Because you didn't just touch his body, you touched his unconscious. You reached into the part of him that has always longed to be claimed. Not by a lover, but by himself. And in the mirror of your sovereignty, he saw the shadow of his own potential. And it shook him. But make no mistake, the man who is shaken by you will try to return to equilibrium. He will run to the women who do not see, who do not stir, who do not awaken. He will cling to the predictable comforts of being admired without being known. And yet, the ghost of you will follow him. It is not your beauty he remembers. It is your boundary. It is not your touch. It is your stillness. It is not your words. It is your silence when you chose not to defend yourself. because in that moment he met something holy, not submissive, not desperate, not wounded, but sacred. You became the symbol of everything he cannot control and everything he cannot forget. And here's the deeper truth. The woman who evokes this kind of hunger is not playing a role. She is not performing mystery. She is mystery. She has walked through her own fire. She has mourned the parts of her that begged to be chosen. She has confronted the girl in her who confused attention for affection, and she let her die, so the woman could be born. This kind of woman doesn't try to be powerful. She is powerful because she no longer gives herself away cheaply. Her love is no longer a transaction. It is a transmission, an energetic force that either expands a man's consciousness or breaks him open. But to reach her, a man must leave behind his armor. He must be willing to question the masks he wears. The ego that wants to conquer must surrender. The pride that seeks to impress must dissolve. And the boy who hides behind sarcasm, logic, and status must step aside, so the man can finally stand up. This is why her energy disrupts him. She does not entertain his posturing. She does not reward his withdrawal with pursuit. She does not collapse at the sight of his coldness. Instead, she remains, still, radiant, unapologetically whole. And it is this wholeness that he cannot name, but deeply craves. The tragedy of modern love is this. We've been told that romance is about excitement and pleasure, but real attraction, the kind that leaves a mark on the soul, is not always comfortable. It's not loud. It's not performative. It's a quiet reckoning, a slow realization that what draws us in is what exposes us. And what exposes us is what has the power to liberate us. So when a man meets a woman who doesn't need him, but chooses herself, when he sees a woman who would rather lose him than betray her own essence, he doesn't just see her, he sees the parts of himself he abandoned to become acceptable. And that is where the ache begins. He may never speak of it. He may never confess it. Not to his friends, not to the women he chooses after you, maybe not even to himself. But his nervous system will remember you. His dreams will remember you. His silence will be filled with the echo of your detachment. Not because you punished him, but because you released him. Because you refused to make his confusion your responsibility. Because you did not explain your boundaries to be understood. You lived them to be respected. And this above all is what he craves. A woman who does not shrink to fit his comfort. A woman who holds a mirror to the man he could become, but only if he dares to look. A woman who, without ever raising her voice, forces him to meet himself. This is not the craving he can admit. This is not the hunger he brags about. But it is the one that lingers. Long after the flesh forgets. Long after the bed is cold. Long after the excuses run dry. Because once a man has tasted a woman who belongs to herself, everything else feels like hunger. And this is where the feminine must resist her own conditioning. For centuries, she has been trained to soften her truth, to contort herself into palatable shapes, to seek worth in being wanted. But the woman he truly craves, the one he cannot name but cannot forget, is the one who has stopped waiting to be chosen. She has remembered that the man she desires must be worthy of her energy, not entitled to it. This woman no longer proves. She no longer explains. She no longer performs understanding to be loved, because she has stepped beyond the childlike illusion that love is earned through abandonment of self. What he craves is this kind of woman, not the surface, but the essence, not the words, but the frequency of a woman who has met her own darkness and no longer runs from it. A woman whose pain has become her wisdom, whose silence is not absence, but depth, whose gaze undresses the soul without laying a hand. It terrifies him, but it also ignites him. Because when a man touches a woman who knows herself, truly knows herself, he touches the part of life he cannot conquer, the part that forces him to feel, to question, to become. Most men have not been taught how to hold this. They do not know how to sit in the presence of the sacred without trying to possess it. They feel it as danger, not invitation. And so they retreat, sometimes with cruelty, often with confusion. They ghost, They lash, they shame, not because you were wrong, but because you were real. This is the wound of the masculine in a world that fears the feminine. He craves the soul of a woman, yet clings to the comfort of girls. He longs to be transformed, but shrinks back when transformation requires the death of his illusions. And you, the woman who feels everything, who sees everything, you stand at the threshold. You are the test he didn't expect. You are the myth that won't die. He will feel your departure in places he didn't know existed. Because when you refused to explain yourself, he had to confront his inability to understand you. When you stopped giving him access, he was forced to feel his own absence. And when you stopped mirroring his chaos, he came face to face with the silence inside him. This is the kind of woman who doesn't make noise when she leaves. She makes space. And in that space, he meets his shadow. The thing he craves but cannot name is not your body, not your beauty, not your presence. It is your sovereignty. The way you walk away from confusion without looking back. The way you honor your intuition more than his potential. The way you demand nothing, and yet in your stillness, demand everything. Because for the first time, he is not rewarded for withholding. He is not adored for inconsistency. He is not chased for being cold. Instead, he is left with himself. And for the man who is ready, that becomes the turning point. But if he is not ready, he will say you were intimidating. He will accuse you of being detached. He will cast you as the villain in the story he tells himself to avoid change. Let him, because the woman who truly knows herself knows this. You are not here to be understood by a man who hasn't understood himself. You are not here to convince a man to rise. You are here to rise and let him follow if he dares. Let him crave you in silence. Let him ache in the echo of your absence. Let him remember you not by the way you reached for him, but by the way you reclaimed yourself, because that is the imprint of a sacred woman, not the one who begged to be seen, but the one who saw herself and refused to disappear. And in the quiet nights when the world has gone still, that's when he will feel it most, not in the arms of another, not in the praise of his peers, but in the silence after the noise, in the stillness where no one is watching, when the mask falls, and there is no audience left to deceive. He will remember the woman who didn't flinch, the one who didn't collapse in the face of his confusion, the one who didn't rush to fill the silence, to ease the discomfort, to make herself smaller so he could feel big. Because she wasn't interested in pretending. She was interested in truth. And here is the secret no one tells you, especially not him. What a man secretly craves more than devotion, more than affection, more than admiration, is a mirror. A mirror that doesn't flatter, but reflects. A mirror that doesn't bend, but reveals. A mirror that shows him, not who he pretends to be, but who he could be. The mirror of the feminine in her full essence does not lie. She doesn't soothe his ego. She speaks to his soul. That kind of woman is not easy to hold, because she holds herself. She is not afraid of solitude. She does not need permission to exist. She no longer fears being misunderstood, because she has come home to the only understanding that matters, her own. And when a man meets this kind of woman, he is offered one of two choices: to expand or to retreat, to rise or to resent, to evolve or to escape. Some will choose escape. They will say she is too deep, too guarded, too independent. But beneath those labels lies the unspoken truth. She is too sovereign for the man who still finds comfort in his cages. And yet even those men, they crave her. Even in rejection, they orbit. Even in denial, they remember. Because the craving was never about conquering her. It was about being confronted by her. And once that confrontation has occurred, no man remains unchanged. Whether he acknowledges it or not, she has awakened something ancient in him. The longing to be met, not appeased, not seduced, but met, soul to soul, unmasked, unshaken, uncompromising. And to the woman watching this, the one who has been left confused by a man's silence after showing him her truth, understand this. He wasn't repelled by your depth. He was consumed by it. He didn't leave because you were empty. He left because you were full of presence, full of power, full of self. And if that fullness made him feel small, it's because he hasn't yet remembered the vastness within himself. Your light exposed the shadow he's been avoiding, and instead of stepping into it, he stepped away. Let him, because your energy is not a reward, it is a revelation, and not every man is ready to be revealed. But one day he may wake up in a life that looks perfect on the surface, but feels hollow. And in that hollowness, he will remember you, not with bitterness, but with awe, because you were the woman who didn't just love him, you mirrored him. And in that reflection, he glimpsed a man he had never met, but always longed to become. And in that memory, something ancient begins to stir. A whisper beneath the noise, a soft rebellion within his soul. He begins to realize that the craving he mistook for desire was never about possession. It was about transformation, because the woman he could not control was the one who showed him his own limits, and in doing so, revealed the door to his freedom. The men who have not yet awakened will run from this realization. They will drown it in distraction, work, women, validation, pride. But the ones who are ready will feel it as a quiet ache that refuses to fade, an ache that whispers, there was something real there, something holy. And no matter how far he runs, the truth remains. He never wanted to dominate her. He wanted to be seen by her, completely, unguarded, forgiven, and free. And that is what he can never admit. Because to crave such depth is to confess his own vulnerability. To want the sacred is to surrender control, and surrender is the one thing the unhealed masculine fears most. Yet paradoxically, it is also the only thing that will ever make him whole. In Jungian language, she is not merely a woman. She is the anima incarnate, the mirror of his unconscious, calling him back to his forgotten self. Her silence triggers his guilt. Her detachment awakens his shadow. Her grace demands his evolution. She becomes both the wound and the cure, the chaos and the calm, the test and the teacher. And though he may never find the words for it, he will always feel it in every woman he meets afterward, in every fleeting touch that fails to reach what you once stirred. And for you, the woman who feels deeply, who carries both light and shadow in her chest, you must understand this. His inability to meet you is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of his unfinished work. You were never too much. You were simply the mirror too clear for a man still living in fog. So you stop waiting. You stop explaining. You stop bending your edges just to be held. And you begin to live, not from lack, but from fullness. You begin to see that the man who could not stay was merely a symbol of your own initiation. The universe's way of showing you that you were meant to embody your power, not prove it. And something shifts. The ache softens. The silence no longer feels like loss. It feels like space, sacred space, where your own voice can return, where your feminine essence no longer performs, but simply is. You become the calm in your own storm, the fire that no longer burns for approval, but radiates from purpose. And as you rise in that wholeness, something miraculous happens. The men who are not ready will fade from your field, and the man who is, the one who has faced his own shadows, who has met his own depths, will recognize you instantly, not as a conquest, but as a reflection, not as temptation, but as truth. Because when the sacred feminine stands in her power, she no longer asks to be understood, she becomes the understanding itself. And the man who is ready will not crave to possess her. He will crave to join her, to build not from ego, but from essence, to meet not from need, but from wholeness. And that union, when it happens, will not be loud or dramatic. It will be quiet, grounded, eternal. Two souls that no longer seek validation, but resonance. So remember this, the man who left was your mirror. The man who will stay will be your match. And the space between them, the solitude, the silence, the aching in between, that was your becoming. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses. And when she chooses, the world rearranges itself around her calm.